money. But what's the issue really here? Is it legislative? Is it all about the cash crunch hitting the country due to coronavirus pandemic? Bearing in mind, COG has become synonymous with asking for money for the counties.
Right.
We'll definitely take a look at that in much more, Trix.
Absolutely. But before we get into that, let's take a look at what's making headlines on the international papers. And as usual, we start off in Uganda. Let's take a look at the Daily Monitor and see what's making headlines this morning. And on the paper, we are told, my COVID-19 story. I tested multiple times, and multiple times to be sure my political enemies were not playing games. And that is the take of someone who has actually had an experience with COVID-19. And of course, they're giving us a tally of the coronavirus infections. An interesting element with that is actually that the IMF and the UN are weighing in hard on Tanzania to give data on their COVID-19 infection rate, because since April 2020, they have been stuck at 509. Of course, that is not a factual figure. But of course, there is Kenya is leading, and then we have Uganda and Rwanda in tow. Also, quarry collapses on 7 in Bukasa. We're told about that calamity that happened in a part of Uganda and how NRM party shielded Nabanja from scrutiny. Take a look at that and find out the political intrigues that are happening surrounding the NRM party as well as Ugandan politics. Also, Todd Wong's turbulent rise to NRM's helm. It seems like NRM is taking center stage on this page. Also, first pharmacy boss and police raid claim is false. Find out more about those intrigues that are unfolding in Uganda. Let's move on to the next paper and see what is making headlines. We have The Citizen this morning. They're leading with a story titled Why Tanzania is Not Ready for Cryptocurrencies. We do know that the president gave an assent to that form of business, but of course there seems to be some hurdles that are being shown a light upon in that article. Also, Mwanza should be trade hub. This is what the president has said, President Samia Suluhu, that is. And in the entertainment section, or rather in entertainment, Diamond Platinum's response to BET Award removal petition. Find out why there is a petition against his award, and of course what he had to say about that. And also we have Burundi reopens border with Tanzania, and of course it has been closed owing to multiple issues. We also have a closed border between Rwanda and Uganda, so that's very interesting. Also, let's find out what's making headlines in Rwanda. Poor grades, anxiety follow months without school. Yesterday they were highlighting the situation in Uganda, whereby some Acholi girls, teenagers, were pregnant, and that was just a fallout after them staying away from school for long owing to the coronavirus. And Uganda, a similar story is making headlines right there, because they're coming back to school, having to face their academics, but of course anxiety is, which is natural, is being experienced. Now, why Africa could face a vaccine-resistant COVID? Find out why Africa is not really experiencing luxury when it comes to the availability of the coronavirus vaccine. So, of course, that's an element of that. And Burundi reopens its border with Tanzania. Another story also on the same, on Rwanda Today. And joint Rwanda and South Africa team to guide efforts to mend relations. Also, UN calls for Mali polls minus coup leaders. Let's move on to another paper and see what's making headlines. The East African this morning is telling us why Africa could face vaccine resistance, and that's the same story we saw on the Rwanda Today website. And of course, availability of that vaccine is a key element of this story. Also, we have to know that vaccine apartheid that has been decried by various African leaders is another element to that. Find out more by taking a look at this or the Rwanda Today article. Also, the reopening of that border is another big story that is cutting across, as you can see right there. And then Kenya to reopen Mogadishu embassy. This is according to the ministry. This is a plus in terms of Kenya-Somalia relations, and US rallies EU for more Addis sanctions. And last but not least, World Bank gives South Sudan on $176 million for food projects. And this is a story that actually broke a few days ago, still making headlines today. Let's move on and see what's on the BBC website. They're giving us various takes on what's happening in Gaza. We're told Israeli strikes in Gaza after arson balloon is launched, and also many stories that are making headlines across many parts of the world. Find out more. And also we have the world page of the CNN telling us they killed our children. Witness describes Russian atrocities. Also, Biden pushes China to threaten China threat at G7 and NATO, but European leaders are trading carefully. Hungarian protests against LGBTQ rights crackdown, and also inside Japan's growing lonely death cleanup service. Find out what that is all about. And of course, we have the local dailies to look forward to and find out what's being covered here in the country. And joining us, we're having Jimmy Kagoni, who's a political analyst, Stephen Mwakesi, who is a public policy analyst, joining us here, as well as Kevin Osido, who is a governance expert. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making the time to join us this morning. All right, now let's kick this off by taking a look at what's making headlines with the Standard this morning. They're leading with DP Ruto pain over Uhuru-NASA plan. An upset DP faults his boss for abandoning 8 million Kenyans who voted for Uhuru-Ruto dream to join hands with NASA opponents, saying Uhuru intentionally destroyed Jubilee. And of course, this is coming on the back of another article that made headlines yesterday, claiming that the president is not interested in the continued decline of the Jubilee party, while some big leaders in Jubilee claim that they were there to kick out the dissidents. Then we are having the front page also telling us about how we are having Chinese onions on our tables. A very interesting one right there. Of course, we do know what's happening with the Chinese fish. Big question is, why can't we supply ourselves with these things? And then leadership vacuum in KPA, Treasury grows for Eurobond, and top stars line up in Tokyo. Of course, that has to do with the Olympics. They're also given at the bottom of that page, or rather bottom half, news on reveal on schools with top Form 1 applications. Mistakes in high school, it says selection by 2020 KCPE candidates derail students' quest to join their institutions of choice. Find out more by grabbing yourself a copy before we actually analyze these papers. But also that a similar headline is on the Daily Nation front page this morning. On the Daily Nation, we're told collapse of the tyranny of numbers. The big vote bloc at Mount Kenya, that Mount Kenya has wielded in past elections, is likely to splinter, going by the divisions rocking the region. Initially divided along Kieleweki Tangatanga factions allied to President Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, a further rift has emerged, pitting camps east and west of the mountain, even as the 2022 succession contest hots up. Now, let's take a look at this story as we get into our discussions today. Deputy President William Ruto has launched a scathing attack against his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta, over reports he was backing plans for the revival of the moribund NASA outfit. In a bare-knuckle attack that clearly points to growing rift between him and President Uhuru Kenyatta, the deputy took to social media pages to question the move. The DP appears unhappy over a meeting held at State House between the president and leaders from the Lower Eastern, during which he asked the NASA leaders to unite ahead of the 2022 general election. The push for the revival of NASA has been gaining momentum despite resistance from one affiliate party leader, Musalia Mudavadi. Here's Jeff Kirui with that story.
President Uhuru Kenyatta's State House meeting with leaders from the Lower Eastern region on Monday, and talk of president supporting one of the NASA principals has reignited the simmering political cold wars between him and his deputy William Ruto. In a post directed at President Uhuru Kenyatta, DP Ruto asks, and I quote, "So what happens to the Thurakus, the Kumira contingent, the 8 million of us who woke up early and voted 3 times for Uhuru Kenyatta William Ruto ticket?" End of quote.
Wakati tunaungana kuangalia macho kwa macho, ana kwa ana, au viongozi wa NASA, kiongozi ambaye atakuwa mbele sisi kuangalia na yeye macho kwa macho ni Uhuru Kenyatta, sababu amepewa kazi mpya. Yeye ndiye campaign manager wa chama cha NASA, yeye ndiye campaign manager wa viongozi wa upinzani.
In another tweet, the DP further puts to task his boss, asking him, and I quote, "Was the destruction or dismembering of Jubilee a national party meant to pave way for support of regional or tribal parties in NASA?" The DP goes further, asking, now with the collapse of Jubilee, isn't it fair for those who can't fit in ethnic parties to build UDA as an alternative national party? End of quote.
We are on our own. Tuanze kujipanga sasa.
The president has more than once accused his deputy of politicking for his 2022 presidential bid.
Tulisonga pamoja hapa katikati, ndio sasa 2022 ikaanza kuwa inapita.
In 2019, through Executive Order Number 1, President Kenyatta technically anointed Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i as Super CS, entrusting him to run his development engine, a role that was previously being performed by DP Ruto.
I have done much more than I was able to do even in my first term. Why? Because I have been able to focus myself, working in conjunction with my colleagues, and being able to focus on the development agenda, not the political agenda.
The revival of NASA, according to political analyst Herman Manyora, points to a bigger scheme heading to 2022 general election.
It's not about NASA. It's about the game plan of Uhuru and Raila, the game plan of the handshake. That you bring all the regional kingpins together in one formation. Make them agree to a deal that so-and-so is the president. When we win with a new constitution, so-and-so will be the prime minister, and so on and so forth.
Wamenipangia sana. Lakini na mimi pia nimepanga. Itakuwa hivi.
The Cold Wars between president and his deputy is redirecting the interests elsewhere. The burial of mother of ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi early January, giving what perhaps could be the clearest indication that his support is elsewhere.
Kuna jamii tu mbili za Kenya ambazo zimetawala, labda ni nafasi ya jamii nyingine pia kutawala.
Jeff Kirui, KTN News.
Thank you, Kirui, for that story. Now, let's take a look at what the papers, the angles the papers are taking. The Daily Nation is referring to it as the Tower of Babel because, of course, it has fallen apart. And then the Daily Nation this morning is just terming it something, well, calling it that is a situation, a shattered situation. An upset DP faulted his boss for abandoning the 8 million. Now, here's a quote here from the Deputy President that I would put to Mr. Kagoni. So, what happens to the Turakus? If I'm not getting that right, Dhurakus, the Kumira contingent, the 8 million of us. Now, no youth, no woman, no man who woke up early and voted 3 times for Ruto ticket merits support. Sawa tu, tutajipanga na support ya Mungu. This is what the Deputy President has said. Mr. Kagoni, I'll start off with you. What do you make of this story and how things are unfolding?
Thank you very much, and good morning to our viewers today as we just check on what is in the papers and the dailies and check the state of the nation. First of all, I want to believe that actually the president said what he has said,
yes,
or rather what has been quoted, because I've been waiting to see a clip that exactly captures his own words, and haven't seen any. I think we are relying on some remarks that were highlighted by one of the dailies.
Yes.
That basically that's what he said in a meeting that he had with the Ukambani leaders.
Yeah.
And I want to believe that maybe that was also the same premise that the deputy president responded to when he saw that thing.
As well as what was implied by him meeting.
Yes, that was what was implied. Now, having that context, now let's get into it and ask ourselves. If it is true that the president hinted, if it is true that the president actually hinted that he would actually back one of the NASA members, the question is this new? I don't think so. I think we have actually been suspecting that the differences with the deputy president have actually been enlarging day by day.
Yes.
And therefore, we expected that maybe they are not together. But what is even surprising is on the other side is for the deputy president to actually appear surprised himself in his own tweet, appearing that that this could actually be happening. Now, when I saw that, I read first, I asked myself, why is the deputy president surprised about this? I thought there has been more signals before that have actually hinted that they might not be together with the president. That's number one. Number two, I asked myself, would the president function, what would the president function say about the deputy president? Has he been supportive to them during this session? Because I think much of the complaints that we have heard from the president himself, including maybe something that you have just heard now, is that the president has actually been saying that the deputy president decided to concentrate on 2022 and forget that they actually had an agenda for them to implement.
Yes.
I think he has really addressed the issue in a way to try and woo him back to the handshake and show him that the handshake is not really meant to eliminate him from the pact. He is also supposed to be part of this, and this can actually be seen from the prayer breakfast that happened in the year 2019 when he graduated the handshake to a handshake.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I asked myself, what would the president function actually really say about what the deputy president has said? Would they say that, have you also been supportive in our agenda to actually try and implement about that? And number three is that what are the dynamics? And I want to say this even in the new context of what I saw Moses Kuria talking about, now trying to respond to this. So, you know, let me tell you, if it is a rough game, it is a rough game for everybody. I mean, I cannot complain when you are rough, and me, I'm allowed to be rough. Because when I saw that and asked myself, and I'm speaking this from a very objective perspective, you have a candidate in Kiambaa. There is a candidate of Jubilee in Kiambaa. The deputy president has a candidate in the same Kiambaa. So how do you expect the president to behave in such a scenario? And we have so many other constituencies that this has actually really been happening, where you find the function that is aligned to the deputy president have a candidate who is competing against the Jubilee party. If you are so interested with the Jubilee party, so to speak, and you really wanted to revive the Jubilee party, why don't you do the honorable thing and maybe support the Jubilee and show them that I've actually been so royal, I've been here quite sitting, but then you have pushed me to the corner. I didn't see that. And therefore, I find you have a problem with you have a problem with the president says, me, I'm going to work with these ones. Yet you are working with somebody who is actually fighting the same thing that you're saying we should actually save. So there is no way that you can be the one who is holding the bottle that has the petrol, but you have a problem with the person who is holding the matchbox. We are all in the same, we are doing the same thing. That's the state of the Jubilee at the moment, and I find like maybe what we did now as a Jubilee party needs to do is to call for a conference and agree. Let's now get to know who is in.
A lot of people have said the Jubilee party is dead. Do you think that would fix, or are we beyond conferences and meetings at this point?
I think the only issue with the Jubilee is that it doesn't have a clear candidate for the presidential election for 2022. Actually, and you know, that has actually been the main board for most of our political parties in Kenya. And I don't know at what point we will really move from that, because most of the time our real clue is exactly who is the presidential candidate for the next election. Now, unfortunately, on this one, the Jubilee party members always thought that that is actually going, the natural here was actually going to be the deputy president. As it appears, that has changed. So with now that change of goal, so you will find the Jubilee members, some have actually gone to ANC. You listen to people like Sakaja, you realize they are aligned now to ANC. You listen to people like Ishongwa, you realize they are aligned to now the UDA. So by the virtue
to ODM.
Yes, to ODM. Now you realize that as far as there is no that, and by the way, maybe it's point we need a forum or in a different discussion, we need to really discuss about how to put parties together, because there are other social issues that parties really need to be addressing about, so that there are ideologies that can hold us together over and beyond just the presidential election that will be the further, yes, the personality politics, because that has actually been the challenge.
Stephen Mwakesi, thank you for patiently waiting for your turn to voice this. Yes. But I'd like to ask you, when you hear what the Deputy President is saying, it almost seems like there was a hope that things would make a turnaround at some point and the president would come back home and of course things would go back to normal. But clearly the more he speaks out or the more things unfold, it seems like he's more resolute in his disunity with what was the Uhuru-Ruto before or of yesterday's. What do you make of this and his sentiments that are very impassionate? Sawa tu, tutajipanga na support ya Mungu. What do you make of that?
Good morning, Kenyans. Good morning, Trix. I think for me, when I view what was said by the president yesterday, he's just, in my view, trying to be very crafty and very sly about how he's going to manage the remainder of the term, and that's the 13 months before the next general election. Because at this particular juncture, he would naturally not expect a lot of opposition to his development agenda coming from William Ruto, because part of his candidature will really depend on what the president has been able to achieve over the past 10 years. So, but he would then anticipate that if he does make the blunder of doing any gesture that supports the deputy president, he might ask the coalition partners who form part of NASA, that is Raila Odinga and Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka and the rest, to begin actually going after his administration and whether they really have been able to achieve anything over the past 10 years. ODM has been silently hinting at this, trying to really state that Jubilee should carry its own failures, but are always there to be part of the successes that Jubilee has done when it has leaned to their advantage, as the case with what has been happening in the regions such as Nyanza region by virtue of the handshake. Yes. But when I look at how the Deputy President read the way in which the President put forward his case, ideally he was casting aspersions on the idea of unity. Unity does sound much, that whenever there is unity around allowing the president to do what he terms as carry out a development agenda, then that is what is much better as compared to working with his own deputy in running government. And looking forward, you can see that the president is trying to be a part of how the 2022 election formations come around. But I think it's a failed project. The Deputy President also saw this as an opportunity to make a bolt and say that if we cannot find a house in Jubilee, then let's all go to UDA. And I do think that he might get traction. Moses Kuria was quite apt in his analysis of how the president, while he was leader of opposition, decamped from his own role as leader of opposition to join government. And now he is joining NASA while heading government. And, you know, it's some of these analyses that are hitting home to most of the Kenyans and are wondering what are these kind of formations being done. And the person who's looking like the villain, William Ruto, is slowly but surely rising up within the Kenyan electorate as somebody who has been set apart.
Let me ask you, given how much the thing that you have pointed out, he's making inroads in parts of the country that no one would even, you remember with the Kibra by-elections even. So why would he be so worried about the tyranny of numbers as has been termed by the media, or even the kumira as he's terming it? Why would he be worried? It's all about numbers, and he seems to be doing well in that aspect, aspect of it all.
And I think this is something that is baffling to most of the people who are political strategists, because at the same time, when it looks like the other side, One Kenya Alliance, is creating a formation, in most times it's creating divisions within what they're calling the strongholds.
Yes.
We're finding, like right now, from the weekend, you can see that there's a clear faction between Mount Kenya East and West.
Yes.
And that means that within the Gema, that is becoming a split. The Akamba are slowly but surely moving into one particular formation and trying to state that they want to stake a claim on their own. And you see, all of this is creating a very fertile ground for the Deputy President to plant a seed of UDA being a unifying factor in all these fractures that are being occasioned right now by the need to beat only one person called William Ruto. But I think the President has a serious balancing act to carry out over the next few months. And I know for him making such statements and also asking that the country remains united so that they can achieve the development goals that he had already set out is something very important to him, because as we know in our country, the moment politics, there's a green card for politics, there's no development agenda that can really proceed. It becomes just a very clear-cut concern of saying that we want to win at all costs. Yes. And much of development is given the back burner. You know, yes, there's a time I was looking at it and saying, you know, the president has had a big luxury as compared to other previous presidents that were before him, both Moi and also Kibaki, that he's the one president that is going into an election year while not looking such like a lame duck. He's able to still have his sway within parliament. He's able even to make commentaries about 2022, and the next day there is nothing much except tweets from the deputy president and a Facebook post.
Yes.
Previously, I mean, most of the retiring presidents would have very little to talk about when it came to how they foresee the next elections to be. And so in this case, I believe that it's a very watershed moment for the president, but the deputy president is within his rights to assert what he believes to be the more concrete agenda for himself and the people who follow him, that uniting the country is more than just being able to say that it is this one who is meant to succeed me or the other, but it's about bringing people who had one similar agenda previously to continue with that. And that's why he mentioned the Turakus and he said the Kumira, all these people, because they were unified in going after electing the president 3 times, because they saw that there is more unity when they were together under Jubilee and under the Jubilee Alliance in 2013 than what they're seeing right now. But as for the Kiambaa by-election and everything, I think I don't fault the deputy president for going to field a candidate in Kiambaa. It's within his rights, and I think it's also good for our democracy to see people compete for positions, because other than that, looking at the super alliance that the president has been able to create, it would almost become a given that the moment there is a by-election in a region like Central, Jubilee will only field one candidate and will have candidates unopposed. So it's a bold thing and a good thing for our democracy to see that that even in this day of alliances shaping up left, right, and center, it's important to see that there can be competition and healthy competition as that.
Okay, and this is, as you say, a democracy after all. So on page 5 of the Standard, we're told in hard-hitting tweets crafted in Kikuyu, Kalenjin, and English, Ruto accused the president of intentionally destroying the Jubilee Party to pave way for support of regional and tribal parties. Grab yourself a copy of the Standard and learn more about that developing political story. And still on politics, business mogul and political strategist Jimmy Wanjigi has announced his interest for the country's top seat. Wanjigi, who is credited for Uhuru's 2013 victory and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's 2017 presidential bid, says he is done playing politics in the background and is now bracing for a duel for presidency in the next year's polls. Our senior political affairs reporter Muribi Mwangi interrogates the intrigues of Wanjigi's entry and explains why his entry shifts even more focus on Mount Kenya's role in the race for the country's top seat.
In the Uhuru Kenyatta-led National Alliance and William Ruto's United Republican Party merger for a presidential ticket in 2013, A powerful hand in strategy and finance was at play. Businessman and political strategist Jimmy Wanjigi, who would in 2017 fall out with the duo to back their bidder for former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, climaxing in this state of anarchy, picked by Odinga's controversial January 30th swearing-in as what he called the people's president. And turns out Wanjigi is yet again back from the woods. He is eyeing the country's top seat. Wanjigi told KTN News that this time he shall not be king-making, but actively on the political ring, and shall address the rest of any questions at what he called the appropriate juncture. Prodded further whether his name would be on the 2022 presidential ballot, Wanjigi answered in the affirmative. That is correct.
He appeared to be well-resourced, which is a factor in itself. Whether that being well-resourced and being a good strategist would translate to votes for him is another matter.
Sources private to Wanjigi's inner political think tank told KTN News that the prominent businessman was behind a series of town hall meetings across the 7 Murang'a constituencies, angled at resuscitating the region's political consciousness, in a strategy observers see as an attempt to whip the region behind the push to retain the presidency. Wanjigi's entry to the race for the country's top seat, nomading an already murky Kenyatta succession battle. A power play even more complex on the mountain, where National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi's coronation as the Mount Kenya spokesperson has sparked a tough supremacy battle between Mount Kenya East leaders and their counterparts from the Gikuyu-speaking counties, where Murang'a Governor Mwangi wa Iria has already announced his candidature for the top job, alongside former Cabinet Secretary Mwangi Kionjori, in a list that also features 2013 presidential hopeful Peter Kenneth. Wanjigi was in October 2017 at war with the Kenyatta regime when police raided and vandalized his posh Muthaiga home over claims of hiding unlicensed firearms, only days before the state also went after his elderly father, Maina Wanjigi, on similar claims with summons to appear before a Nyeri court, a case the state subsequently abandoned, but not without bitter Wanjigi fight back.
This current regime of Uhuru Kenyatta, this is a home they know, it's a home they have visited, it is a home they've eaten with. They've eaten with my family, here in this home, many, many times. They have. In fact, their government was formed in this home. In this home.
And with next year's polls promising a complex mix of political poker, Wanjigi certainly faces an uphill task, turning his backroom political clout into votes. Murabi Mwangi, KTN News, in Nairobi.
Right, and the article, this one too is on page 5 of the Standard, tells us he is a shrewd political strategist credited with the successful pairing of the Deputy President William Ruto and President Uhuru Kenyatta, and as well as the strategy behind the 2017 campaign strategy of Raila Odinga when he, of course, under the ODM banner. And of course, that probably points to how he would fare as a presidential candidate. Joining the discussion is Sakwa Bunyasi, who is the current Member of Parliament for Nambale constituency. Welcome to the conversation, Honorable Bunyasi. Now, what do you make of this new entrant into the conversation about 2022?
For me, that's a bit of a surprise, but yes. I think it's the beginning of a marathon race when the crowds are very huge.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit of a dash for people to get into lanes and get ahead of the game. Let's see what happens after the dash. I think after about, the dash might last a few months, and then we shall see who else is still racing to stay in the game. It does add to the numbers, not only for Mount Kenya, but for the country as a whole.
Yes.
If in theory we had a ballot equivalent to the number of candidates we have, it would be a multi-page ballot. So, but I do not think we shall end up there like that. I think this is just jostling for positions. It's going to stabilize, and then we shall get to know really who wants to stay in the race.
Because many of the people who are trying to analyze the situation in Mount Kenya, says the biggest problem is that they don't have a candidate. Do you think this candidate, or rather possible candidate, as you put it, could be the answer to that problem?
I think they have candidates. But what we do not have has been the prior situation when there was rather a perceived leading candidate from the beginning.
Yes.
So it was quite easy for people to debate and position themselves around that core, a nexus around the core being the person they think is the presumptive leader ahead of the others and the likely president. People like the outgoing president had the advantage, of course, of name recognition or family recognition.
Yes.
So it was presumptive that he's a serious candidate, not going to carry on the mantle that his father once carried. But when you have 100 people or so, no, 100 is exaggeration, 20 candidates in one region, there's no clear leader, but one will emerge. As I said, it's like a marathon. You start in the hundreds, and then you thin out, and you begin to see the race clearly. That's not visible yet.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Kagoni, do you believe things are going to crystallize later on, perhaps as we go towards the 2022 general elections, and perhaps then it will be more clear whether or not people such as Jimmy Wanjigi are actually serious about becoming president?
Sure. I think we're just seeing the entry point, and this is basically the kind of characterization that you see in the entry point when we are headed to a presidential election. However, the truth of the matter is that you can never ignore Jimmy Wanjigi. He brings on to the table one aspect that is literally very crucial when it comes to campaigns, and if he is known, he is oiled, and therefore definitely the aspect of financing the campaigns is something that you cannot really ignore.
Yes.
This is also somebody who has worked with quite a number of governments in terms of he's a big entrepreneur. And therefore, you cannot really ignore his role. And when he says that he's really going to run, you cannot just ignore his role. Especially now, and you know, he has one natural aspect that, or rather, let me just put it this way, that you'll see a little bit of alignment to not really to, or rather much of the chemistry is not really to the deputy president. Perhaps it could be elsewhere if there is any pact that is going to be formed. Possibly you'd find like there is some chemistry that can work easily with people like the ANC leader, the NASA, the Kenya One team, and all that. There is a bit of natural chemistry that you would actually find that side, inclined and skewed that side more than you would actually find it with the deputy president. However, I am sure even the quarters of the deputy president you would not really ignore. Then number two is that you know, he might not even fit into the class of the people that are called the hustler. So therefore maybe he would want to...
Would not, or definitely does not? Definitely does not.
Well, we even don't know exactly who is a hustler in this country because we have seen certain characters really saying they are hustlers, and we really want to identify exactly now who is a hustler, or looks like there are certain classes of hustlers, so to speak. The truth of the matter is that between now and December, a lot is really going to happen. There is going to be alignment and realignment and adjustment. The people are really going to really change. This game is not, the way we are seeing it, I think this is purely now just the entry point. A lot is really going to change, and we can only watch and see how it's going to happen.
Okay, only time will tell how this unfolds. And of course, on the other side, we're going to get Stephen Mwakisi's take on this new element in politics, where business Jimmy Wanjigi has strongly hinted, that's what the Standard is saying, that he may join the race to succeed President Uhuru Kenyatta in the 2022 general election. And of course, on the other side, there's a story, an interesting one, in the Standard. On the front page, it is teased saying, and now it's Chinese onions on our tables, right there. And page 4 goes into a comprehensive analysis and terms it a crying shame how onions from China are feeding Kenyans. While local farmers have been blaming Tanzania for bringing the cheap produce, the data shows that they have been shedding tears over the wrong country. In 2019, for instance, 96% of onions imported to Kenya came from China. Let's take a short break.